Hi, everybody. Welcome to our very first physics lesson online. This is a brand new thing for us and really exciting. So actually, a few hours ago, we did a little live version of this. This is a post-record for all of you who will be coming in via Google Classroom to participate in this class. So let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Micah Young. You are welcome to call me Miss Micah or Miss Young as you wish. I am a teacher here at Five Keys, and it is my great privilege to be teaching you physics. So I am excited about it, and I hope that you are too. You have, presumably, already gotten into Google Classroom, logged into Google Classroom, and found this video. So you'll see in Google Classroom, there are a couple other things that you can see there. You've got the entire agenda for the day. You have all the activities that we'll be doing, and you have the videos that we'll be watching. So today in this little lesson, we are going to watch two videos with one another, and I will let you know when it's time to watch them, and doing two different activities together as well. So I'm going to begin just with kind of a broader view. First, of what you can expect from me and from this class, and what will be expected of you. And then we're going to get into what is physics. So for the expectation pieces, you, presumably, if you continue to watch this like this instead of live class, you'll basically be interacting with me in a video game. And if you have questions, you can email them to me or write them in the comment section of Google Classroom, and I will do my best. Also receive my phone number. I will write it into Google Classroom again, my Google number. You are welcome to call that anytime between 9 and 5 if you have questions about this class as well, and I will do my best to answer you then. My guess would be some of you later at night, send me a comment in Google Classroom or email if you have a question in a timely fashion, most likely the next business day. What is expected of you? So you are expected to either log in live to our meeting from 10 to 12, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the next 2 weeks. Mondays at 10 in the morning. In your Five Keys email, you should have already received an invitation to that meeting. We would love to have you live. Live means you can actually text us your questions while it's happening. You can do your activities and work with the other people who are logged in live. I can be answering your questions directly. My opinion, live is a little bit more fun. But if that doesn't work for you, we are really glad that you are watching this video and participating in this way. So if you are going to stay with this, doing the post-recording, watching the video of me and us, then you are expected to truly watch the entire video. I will be teaching you like this, like we are right now. I'll be showing you some videos. I'll be walking you through exercises that we're going to do together. And to watch the videos that I showed you, and to do the activities. When you complete an activity, you'll be able to turn it in. There's a Google Classroom in the upper right-hand corner of any worksheet you do. There's a turn-in button, so you'll turn it in. I will look over your work. I will give you comments on it and feedback, and you will get credit. Attending all 6 class periods is one physics unit. So we ask you to watch all 6 of these videos, and do the activities involved, and you will get 1 physics unit for that. Well done, everyone. You can totally do it. Now, let's get into a little bit about what is physics. With some bigger questions that aren't very sciencey, perhaps. But I want you, wherever you're sitting right now, in your living room or your classroom or wherever you are, just to kind of go with it and think about these. Here's my first big question. Have you ever wondered why you're here? What is life all about? What is your purpose? Ever stop to think about that? The really big why of you and of me? I've spent a little time thinking about that. Okay, here's question number 2. What is reality? Now, when you go to sleep at night, perhaps you dream. When you dream, things happen. When you wake up, you know what you dreamt, or you believe what you dreamt wasn't real, right? And then the waking up you, the one that walks around in the world, the one that's listening to me right now, that's the real happening in reality. But how do you know that? I mean, how do you know it? Okay, question number 3. Why is the universe set up the way it is? Have you ever wondered about that? Why, when I grab my handy dandy chem lotion and drop it, does it fall down instead of floating up? Now you, super smart student, probably have heard the word gravity. And maybe you just answered me, well, gravity, yes. But why? Why does gravity pull things down as opposed to pushing them up? Why does the universe work like that? Why do we have seasons? Why, if I put my hand against this whiteboard, does it not go through? Why does it stop? Why can't I just reach through the board or the wall? What time? Why does time go forward? And we watch time go forward 1 minute to the next, but it doesn't go backwards. But everything else moves backwards. I can move backwards. Why not time? Okay. Now maybe your head is kind of boggling and you're thinking, Miss, why are you asking us all of this big stuff? We're here to learn physics. What does it have to do with physics? Here's my answer. Physics is all about humanity's attempt to understand these huge, complex issues and questions, our amazingly complicated universe, and to break it down into really simple parts. That's what we're doing here together. Physics is actually about these really, and what is reality? How does it move? And why are some things not? Why can I move through water but not the wall? That's what physics is about. And it's exciting. And I really hope that you will get excited about it and that you will come to this class with your questions and your curiosity, wanting to know what the universe is all about. And we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down into simple mathematical formulas. We're going to break it down. And I would love to say that simple is always going to be super easy. But it's probably always easy. Because I think you can be challenged to think bigger and understand something new. So there may be moments in this physics class that you think, this is hard. And you know what? That's okay. It can be hard because you will work hard and be awesome. It doesn't need to be easy for you to succeed. I know you can do this. I can do it. You can do it. We've got this. That is my little intro to what our physics class is going to be. And now I'm going to show you a film. It's a short little movie. It's about 3 minutes. It's beautiful, I think. It has some really amazing pictures of the cosmos and the universe and kind of introduces this idea of physics as a conversation about the entirety of the universe made simple. Okay? So I'm going to walk over to my desk, screen share with you, be able to see and hear what I'm looking at through my computer. Give me just 1 minute. you enjoyed that short little video of some pretty amazing things that all have to do with physics. Now that I've told you a teeny bit about what physics is, and we watched that little video that named something, talked about waves, talked about motions, talked about force, talked about the cosmos and the planets, gravity and gravitational pull, just a few things, computers, how computers work, that video just talked about. Now it's time to make a list, or better said, continue a list about what you know about physics and what you want to know about physics. In just a moment, I'm going to share my computer again and open up something that's in your Google Classroom, KWL chart. Now that KWL chart stands for what you know, what you wonder or want to know, and what you learned. Together, we are going to, well, or not together, together, all together, we are filling in the what you know and what you want to know. In 2 weeks, we'll take some time to go back and fill in what you learned. Now I'm going to screen share and walk you through where to find that document, and then we're going to pause this recording. And you too can go ahead and just push pause on what you're watching now and take a few minutes in. I want you all to write down at least 2 things that you know about physics or that are related to physics, and 2 questions, 2 things that you wonder about physics. And you'll see that there's already a bit of a list there. So go ahead and read through what's already there to get your mind flowing, and then give me 2 new things you know and 2 things you wonder. And then when you come back, turn your video back on, and we're going to keep going with this class. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that little exercise and saw some of the things that your classmates who participated in the live class this morning knew and wondered. I hope you added your thoughts to it. I will be checking that KWL chart to make sure that you did. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about language. In that video, and perhaps even on that KWL chart, you saw some words that we use in everyday language, like weight, right, and energy. We talk about those things often. And other words that you probably don't use so often in everyday language, like mass. Sorry, everybody. I just got slightly thrown off. So coming back, some words that you use in everyday language, other words that we don't use in everyday language. Maybe you've heard people talk about academic language, and maybe that seems to you like a super pain in the tush. Why do we have to change the way we talk when we learn a new subject and learn new vocabulary, and it doesn't make any sense? Let me try and make some sense of it for you. The reason why we learn new vocabulary, and we even talk about academic language or any other kind of language, is so that we can be really specific about the thing we're talking about. So for instance, in physics, we talk about speed all the time. And maybe you talk about acceleration, like how fast you can make your car go. You talk about acceleration. And then there's even a word called velocity. All of these 3 things, if you and I were just hanging out, would kind of mean the same thing. And we'd probably only use the word speed. But in physics, all 3 of those words talk about something very specific and slightly different from one another. And in physics, if we're going to break down really complicated things into their simple parts, it's important that we're real clear about what simple parts suddenly become a whole lot more important. Here's my everyday application. Have you ever had the experience that you thought of something super cool, like some big idea that you haven't really talked about before? Or maybe you experienced something new that was just crazy and you want to tell everyone about it. Or maybe you have a feeling, a really big feeling, not just sad or happy or in love, but something that doesn't seem to fit inside those words. And you've tried to tell someone about your idea or your thought or your feeling. And you hear the words coming out of your mouth, but they're not really the exact thing you want to say. And the person across from you is kind of like, oh yeah, I know. And then they don't know. Okay, that feeling is so frustrating. And I've had that feeling before. And I know that you've got big thoughts in your head and big feelings in your heart. To be able to talk about those things clearly, we need more words. Vocabulary is let's get across and share with one another those big ideas and big feelings that we have. I don't know, maybe that sounds silly to you, but to me, being understood by someone else, like actually making that connection of knowing what we're talking about, is so important. That's what language is about. And that's why when we start a new subject, we're clear about what we're talking about. And you guessed it, we're going to be doing a vocabulary list. There are some words on the list that you've probably heard before, like speed. And there are some words on the list that are probably going to be really new to you. In just a minute, I'm going to share my screen again. I want you to go into Google Classroom, not yet, but in a moment. You're going to go into Google Classroom and find the vocabulary list. And you're going to fill 3 categories. The first category has a list of words. I think there are about 10 of them. The second asks for a definition. And the third category tells you to either write the definition in your own words or find a picture that illustrates the idea of that definition and cut and paste it in. So what I'd like you to do is take the word that you have in the definition list, copy it, paste it into Google, and find a good definition, one that makes sense to you. Copy that definition, paste it in the vocab list, and then go looking for a picture that illustrates, that shows what that definition was. So I'm going to walk over to my computer and share the screen with you and show you where to find that list. Then we're going to pause the recording, and I want you to pause your recording as well, your video, and go ahead and take some time to fill out that vocab list. Exercise, this activity is probably going to take the longest of anything else we're going to do today. Give yourself a good 20 to 30 minutes. If it doesn't take that long, that's great. That's probably about as long as it's going to take. Afterwards, you're going to come back, and together we're going to talk a little bit about Isaac Newton, who he was and what he has to do with the next 6 days that we'll be spending together. And then you're done for the day. So you're almost there, guys. Let's go open that vocabulary sheet. And welcome back again, everybody. So I hope you learned some new words with that vocabulary sheet, and remember to turn where you were working on the page, there was a little turn-in button. If you didn't, then after you watch this last part of the video, go ahead back into Google Classroom and make sure, okay? That way I will know that you've done it and we'll know to look at it. We are into the third and final little piece of today's lesson. That's called officially Looking Forward. What are we going to be talking about for the next 5 lessons with one another? We are going to talk about Newton's 3 laws of motion. Who was Newton? Who came up with 3 laws of motion? Like they he was the one that you see like pictures, cartoon pictures of him sitting under. It's like an apple thing with Isaac Newton. There's a myth about an apple falling from a tree onto his head and being his inspiration for that there is some force that pulls things down towards the center of the earth. We will be talking about that with one another, but not today. For now, we're going to do a little intro into who is Isaac Newton. And that reminds me that I wanted to tell you our objectives for the class. Now, I know you probably can't read what's on the board here, but I'm going to point to them anyway. The objectives for this class is that you as the student will be able to identify Isaac Newton's first 3 laws of physics. And that you'll be able to apply those laws and their formulas. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of math, but if you are normally a little afraid of math, don't get afraid. I promise we can totally do this together. We're going to apply those formulas. And even more importantly, or just as important, we're going to figure out how together to connect those laws of physics to your everyday real life. The speeding ticket you're maybe trying to get out of or that you got the other day. Or different ideas about motion and time. But we're going to figure out how to connect those laws to real life. So, Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was a man who lived quite a while ago, in the 1600s. We usually think of him, or at least I usually thought of him, as like a weird looking guy with a weird curly wig. You know, unfortunately at that time in history, they had this really strange fashion of men wearing those white curly wigs. They didn't actually all have that hair. They were wigs that they have on. I have no idea why they did that, but they did. Anyway, we make some weird fashion choices too. So Isaac Newton had one of those wigs eventually, and he came up with some really cool ideas about why the world works the way it works, why the universe works the way it works. And to this day, most of those things we have not proved wrong. He was right about an amazing amount of stuff. Super smart guy. So we're going to watch a little biography about his life, and then we'll start next week by hearing a little bit more. Let me prepare you for this little biography. This film is another like little 3-minute film. Talk about him, and you're going to see some black and white pictures. However, it has some really good information in it, so I want you to do your best to listen up. And I want you to listen for a couple details. It talks about how Isaac Newton put himself through school. I know usually we think about these like big important guys from history as being super rich, princely kind of folk. Some of them became that way eventually. Isaac Newton didn't start out like that. So pay some attention to how he worked his way through school, what his family did, okay? We also think about these people in history as having super smooth lives. Like they had these grand ideas and then they got rich off of their grand ideas and then they died eventually. Isaac Newton's life wasn't all that smooth, and the video tells us a little bit about it. It mentions that he has kind of a mental breakdown at one point. So be listening. Third thing is Isaac Newton is famous for physics, and that's what we're talking about now. But after that mental breakdown, he started actually thinking about some different stuff. I want you to be having your ears open. The course that his life took and where he ended up in his life. All right, I'm going to walk over again and share my video with you, and you should be able to watch this video. And then we will come back and talk a tiny bit more about Isaac Newton, and then you're done for the day. All right, over I go.
Revolutionary English physicist, mathematician, and philosopher Sir Isaac Newton is perhaps the most famous scientist in history. Born to a farmer in 1642 and cleaning wealthier students' rooms, he went to university at Cambridge, where he would eventually earn a professorship. During the Great Plague in 1665, Cambridge shut down and Newton returned home. It was during this hiatus that he first considered calculus, began to theorize the laws of planetary motion, work with light and color. Though his discoveries would change the world of science, he didn't care about the glory and fame that came with them.
He wasn't too concerned with publishing it, making it available to other people, getting glory for his own sake. It was an intellectual challenge that he wanted to.
And second, other people had to discover that he had made the discovery.
In 1671, Newton demonstrated his revolutionary reflecting telescope for the Royal Society, and soon after published his notes on color, describing his research on optics. After a visit from Royal Society member Edmund Halley, encouraging Newton to prove Robert Hooke's hypothesis on planetary motion, Principia, which introduced his 3 laws of motion and first described the idea of gravity.
Because it set forth a working quantitative mathematical based upon a physical observation,
and led Newton to being elected to Parliament. After several years in London, Newton suffered a nervous breakdown. Though he came out of it, his interest in physical science was replaced with philosophy and alchemy, particularly how they both related to a higher power.
Alchemy was concerned with manipulating what were seen to be 4 elemental properties in nature, the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and realizing that these things made all substances, that you could therefore not only make any other substance, such as gold, but you could also somehow learn the secrets by which God had put the world together.
Later years were spent less in science and more as a public figure. Upon Robert Hooke's death in 1703, Newton became president of the Royal Society, though he didn't get along with many of its members, and made many of his final years a wealthy and famous man, whose discoveries made enormous impact on society.
In the century that came after Newton, the 1800s, the whole tone of that culture. The one single figure from whom they drew most deeply was, in fact, Isaac Newton.
Welcome back, everybody. Can you go ahead and either wave into your camera so we know that you're there, or chat a hello so we know that you're back? I know that wasn't really enough time to finish that vocabulary sheet. So I saw that you got started, and that's excellent, well done. We're gonna do a little bit more together, and then you will have time at the end before 12 to go back in and redo that. Before you go back into that vocab sheet, we're gonna talk a little bit more about what's coming in the next 2 weeks and get started. Now, Nathan added a question to that What I Wonder, asking if did you ask if Einstein was part of physics? Yes, right. So there are 3 really big names in physics, and we're going to be talking about all 3 of them as we go on. The very first guy was a man named Isaac Newton. And maybe you remember hearing something about Isaac Newton in grade school. There was a story about an apple that fell on Isaac Newton's head and inspired him to the idea of gravity. That was the Isaac Newton. We're going to hear more about Isaac Newton today and tomorrow. Then there's a man named Max Planck, or Max Planck, if you're German, a German guy who lived about 150 years ago, who also made some really important discoveries in physics that we are going to look at in a couple of days. And then the last man who made some really important steps in physics was Nathan. That's right, Albert Einstein. And we'll be talking about Albert Einstein. And at the very end, those were three men who did some important stuff. While they were developing some really important stuff with physics, women weren't quite being allowed to go to university or make important discoveries. So at the very end, we're going to talk about some really important women in physics that had been around in the last 50 to 100 years, when women were able to have important jobs and go to university and study. So both some men and some women. First, however, we are starting off with who? Isaac Newton. So Isaac Newton came up with some laws of physics, and we are going to spend these 2 weeks talking about his first 3 laws of physics. Now, you don't have to worry about what those laws are quite yet. We'll get to the first one on Wednesday, and we'll hear them all on Wednesday. For now, just know Isaac Newton, pretty important, some laws of physics. And in order to introduce him as a person, we're going to watch another little video. This video is short. Again, it's about 3 minutes. And it will give you a brief biography. Remember what a biography is? Story of someone's life. A brief biography of Isaac Newton. Now, the video looks a little old-timey. It's got some black and white and some old pictures, but it will show us how really, truly what Isaac Newton looked like when he was alive, which was a while ago. He lived in England. And I want you to pay special attention to a couple of different things that I will talk about in the video. First off, I want you to look. Was Isaac Newton rich? They talk about how he paid for his school. I want you to listen to that. Listen for that information. How did Isaac Newton pay for his school? And then I want you to listen to see if they talk about how old Isaac Newton was when he developed kind of the things, or discovered the things he discovered. Okay, so I'm going to be listening to this biography of Isaac Newton. We're going to come back. I'm going to share my screen. It should work this time with the sound. If it doesn't, then you'll go out and watch the video on your own. I'm going to give it one more try to see if I can share it with you and you'll hear it. That would be the best thing possible. And then we're going to talk about Isaac Newton, watch a video on Isaac Newton, talk a little bit more about him, and then we'll be done for today. I had another little bit planned, but we'll push that until Wednesday since it took us a while to get through our tech difficulties at the beginning of this class. We'll do the rest on Wednesday. Okay, so we're going to watch a brief video on Isaac Newton. We're going to talk about who he was, and then you'll have some time to finish up the vocabulary sheet. I see Capri has a question from one of you. Oh, no, never mind. Okay, so give me 1 second to share my screen.
Revolutionary English physicist, mathematician, and philosopher Sir Isaac Newton is perhaps the most famous scientist in history. Born to a farmer in 1642, Newton worked his way through school waiting tables and cleaning wealthier students' rooms. He went to university at Cambridge, where he would eventually earn a professorship. During the Great Plague in 1665, Cambridge shut down and Newton returned home. It was during this hiatus that he first conceived the method of infinitesimal calculus, began to theorize the laws of planetary motion, and started his work with light and color. Though his discoveries would change the world of science, he didn't care about the glory and fame that came with them.
He wasn't too concerned with publishing it, making it available to other people, getting glory for his own sake. It was an intellectual challenge that he wanted to deal with.
Every discovery that Newton made had 2 aspects. First, Newton made the discovery, and second, other people had to discover that he had made the discovery.
In 1671, Newton demonstrated his revolutionary reflecting telescope for the Royal Society, and soon after published his notes on color, describing his research on optics. After a visit from Royal Society member Edmund Halley, encouraging Newton to prove Robert Hooke's hypothesis on planetary motion, Newton wrote his Principia, which introduced his 3 laws of motion and first described the idea of gravity.
Newton's Principia is generally reckoned to be the single most important scientific book ever written, because for the first time it set forth a working, quantitative, exact, mathematical system based upon experiment and critical observation.
His work made him very popular and led Newton to being elected to Parliament. After several years in London, Newton suffered a nervous breakdown. Though he came out of it, his interest in physical science was replaced with philosophy and alchemy, particularly how they both related to a higher power.
Alchemy was concerned with manipulating what were seen to be 4 elemental properties in nature, the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and realizing that these things made all substances, that you could therefore not only make any other substance, such as gold, but you could also somehow learn the secrets by which God had put the world together.
Newton's later years were spent less in science and more as a public figure. Upon Robert Hooke's death in 1703, Newton became president of the Royal Society, though he didn't get along with many of its members, and made many enemies. Newton spent his final years a wealthy and famous man, whose discoveries made enormous impact on society.
In the century that came after, in the 1800s, we find that the fascination with science, with order, and with reasoned knowledge really set the whole tone of that culture. The one single figure from whom they drew most deeply was, in fact, Isaac Newton.
Hi, everybody. Oops. There we go. I had to mute my own computer. All right. So, did you notice, was Isaac Newton rich? What job did he do to get himself through school? Did anyone hear that answer? If you did, go ahead and type it down in the chat. I'll give you a second to think about it. Try and remember. Did you hear? Anyone? All right, I will give you the answer. Isaac Newton was not rich. He grew up in a relatively poor farming family, and he worked his way through school by cleaning other students' rooms and serving food in the cafeteria. So we aren't talking about like some big knight prince guy who came up with some really cool ideas. We're talking about a really brilliant young man whose brain was kind of amazing, and he figured out a lot of stuff. In that video, you heard how he started out as a student. He studied the natural world, and then he went from there into politics. He had a nervous breakdown at the age of about 36, I think. And then after his nervous breakdown, he kind of moved from doing physics to more philosophy. So he was interested in something called alchemy. Alchemy is a study of, people used to do, they don't really do it anymore. It's a little spiritual, this idea of how you take all the powers in the universe to change one form of matter into another form of matter. That's just a little side note. You're not going to need to know that for physics. But Isaac Newton was a pretty amazing man. And we're going to start out next week hearing a little bit more about him. We're going to watch another little video from Neil deGrasse Tyson, just 2-minute long, that talks about who he was, Isaac Newton, and why Neil deGrasse Tyson thinks he was the most amazing human to ever walk the earth. So he's going to tell us a little bit about that. We're going to answer some questions, and then we're going to get into working with that first law of Newton's regarding physics. So that's what we have coming up. Right now, I'm going to give you a little bit more time to finish those vocabulary sheets because I know that came a little short. And next week, everyone, next week, I promise, we will have this video sharing thing down and we will be able to jump right in at 10. I'd like you all to make sure that, not next week, on Wednesday, next class period, Wednesday morning. So make sure that you are sitting in front of a computer by no later than 9:50. You've logged into Zoom, you've logged into Google Classroom, you've got an idea of what's going on, and you're ready to get to work. And we will let you into the Zoom meeting a couple minutes before 10, so we can all test out our chats and our video buttons and make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to go. And it'll go a whole lot more smoothly than it went today. Thank you again. with my sincerest thanks for being patient with us as we figure this out. I told you at the beginning you can expect my best, and today we're still working out the kinks, but I promise Wednesday will be better. So thank you for that. Please take the time to finish up those vocabulary sheets now. You aren't actually done with class, okay? You need to finish up the vocabulary sheet and turn it in. You have to push the turn in button when you're finished. Then you are done with class, and I can give you credit for being here today. Thank you again so much for being patient and being with us and being open to learning. Thank you for your excellent questions that you wrote in that KWL chart. I'm excited to type in the very last few of them, and we will get back to physics on Wednesday morning at 10. Until then, everyone, be safe, be amazed by the wonder of the world, and we'll see you Wednesday morning. Bye, guys.